Welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon for a webinar with the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics. We have a very, I'm sure we will have a very interesting discussion regarding the impact on our gas industry. We have three speakers. I want to introduce Mr. René Baurtz, based in Switzerland. He is the CEO of GasNat and the chairman of the Global Gas Center. I also want to introduce you Mr. Panos Mitrou from Lloyd's Register, here online. Yeah. And finally, Mr. Kostas Andreozopoulos, Vice President of DEPA and advisor of the Global Gas Center. Just to start the discussion, a small introduction. The COVID crisis presents profound challenges for the global natural gas industry, as it does for the energy system as a whole and the economy at large. Gas demand will be affected in some way. Many economies will experience an economic slowdown. We can also expect some fuel switching. Gas prices have fallen so that have the prices for other commodities, including carbon. They are very low at this moment. In short, gas faces a tough year 2020 with declining demand and prices, and no sign clearly expected from the suppliers at this moment. The three speakers will tackle the questions that was on the agenda and that you all see. And in this context, although we will find new opportunities for gas and LNG. With a sustained lower LNG price, the case for investments that promote switching from coal to gas is now stronger. Given the scale of potential impacts and the significant uncertainty that remains today, it is maybe now time for all players across gas value chain to strengthen their positioning and improve performance in medium and long term. Our three international experts, I'm going to give them the floor just to introduce themselves, a few comments on the current gas markets that they see in this time of COVID-20. I leave the floor to Mr. Baurtz.
Thank you, Valerie. Good afternoon to everybody. We are living a strange period with this COVID pandemic, and the situation is quite new for the energy industry, especially also for the oil and gas industry, because we have a slowdown, especially also in oil demand, but also in the gas demand in the non-residential sector. We see also in the gas sector what's quite new, it's a convergence of the gas prices between Asia, Europe, and USA. So the spread is quite low now, and we have extremely low prices. For example, today, in my company, we bought gas on the European market, for example, on the OPEC spot market in France, for lower than €6 per megawatt hour. So we are confronted also in very low prices, but on the demand side, also with lockdown of many industries, we have also a lack of volumes in this sector and a decrease in demand of gas in Europe. On the other side, we see also that we are filling quite fast now the storages in Europe, and we expect that beginning of the summer or during the summer, the storages will be full in Europe. That means our question is, from where should the demand of gas come? And that's why we expect also to have further low prices during the rest of this year, especially for the Q2 and Q3 period of this year. And even if the activities resumes in mid-2020, we think that the prices are expecting to be still low in the second half of this year. And on the other side, but we will come later on, we see that also LNG reached floor prices, and that also some volumes now are coming from Asia to Europe. So that was my introduction.
Thank you, René. Now it's my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Mitru, based in Athens, Greece. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. And thank you for this opportunity to discuss on a few things on the disruption that COVID has brought to the gas supply chain in general. I am the gas segment manager for Lloyds Register, so my view would be more on the technology and the difficulties we face within the supply chain. So we know that we were in a course to a gas bonanza with too many liquefaction projects pipelined for development during the years to come, and COVID right now we understand that has stopped this process, has stalled, to be more precise, this process, and we don't expect to see much significant development within the rest of the year. On the other side, there are a number of the supply chain side, and especially the maritime supply chain, there are a number of projects ongoing, and from our side, we have seen no significant disruption there yet. Of course, this may be attributed to the fact that the marine supply chain will take some years to develop. So these projects are going to be online in a few years' time. So maybe we will have left behind all this disruption. On the other hand, once again, we realize that the elasticities and the flexibility of the gas market is not the one that we would like to have. And there is a technology aspect there as well. We cannot trade LNG in the way we do with oil. We cannot use ships for floating storage in the way we see that in the oil market. And this is a significant lack. There's a significant lack of buffering there. And this is something that perhaps in future technology applications and future ships, we will need to rectify and change. So as on the practical side, the number of ongoing tenders are still going. So despite a number of rumors or news, we see that the Qatar gas program for shipbuilding carries on. A Polish gas tender carries on. The Total Mozambique tender also continues. So the main, the Aramco one. So we see that a number of developments, especially as far as growing the supply chain of LNG, they seem not to be disrupted by all this change. And so the only thing I can add as a comment is that perhaps this is an opportunity to consider how we would like to build our future gas supply chain, and what are those mitigation measures that could allow us to further manage these kind of disruption events like the one we had now. Of course, there's no infrastructure in place to deal with such with a disruption of such magnitude, but there could be a number of mitigation measures we can have in order to allow the gas market to work in a more efficient way during such crisis.
Thank you very much. That's all?
Yes, that's from my side as an
all right. Thank you very much for this quite optimistic in a way view. We need that during that time. So it's I appreciate it a lot. I leave the floor now to Kostas Andreozopoulos, based as well in Athens. Please, Kostas, give us a view of what is going on in your country and introductory remarks that you want to share with us.
Thank you very much, Valerie. Greetings from my side as well, and a special thanks to the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics and also to the Global Gas Center for this joint event that we are organizing. From my side, I would like also to re-emphasize that we indeed live in unprecedented times. We have seen yesterday for the first time May futures of WTI, the West Texas Intermediate benchmark of crude in the US, reaching very negative levels of price, which created a small panic, if you wish, in the market in terms of the prospects for the coming months. And as far as the energy markets are concerned, we tend to see the effects of this very big slowdown of economic activity that we have seen in the past month or so only ahead of us. So we are anticipating that the worst months will be May and June. And as far as the gas markets are concerned, given the fact that most of the LNG is being priced out of the crude contracts, that means that prices of LNG will only become smaller and smaller, and that is also strengthened by the point that was made by René earlier, that pipe gas as well in Europe is at its lowest almost ever. Historically speaking, we have seen US gas in the Henry Hub being traded above $3 per MMBTU. It has been consistently seen under $2 per MMBTU, and it's reached the level of 1.6 earlier. So at a global scale, what I want to emphasize again is that we are living in a period of very low prices. We should anticipate that this level of low prices will persist at least for the coming months. Primarily because of the COVID-19 situation and the fact that the economic activity has stopped in most places around the world. As far as Greece is concerned, I would say that these very low LNG prices primarily have led into a completely new scene in the wholesale market of gas in Greece that we have not seen in the past. The Public Gas Corporation, DEPA, has market shares of, roughly speaking, about 30%. Then you have other groups like Mytilineos with about 40%. Elpedison, as I would rather say, a newcomer in the LNG business, is now moving into a market share of about 15%. And the remaining of the big players, the Public Power Corporation, Prometheus Gas, and Heron, having about 15% of the rest of the market. And that only can emphasize the fact that pipe gas is no longer the most competitive source of gas. LNG can be equally competitive. There are a number of stranded, spot cargoes of LNG that they try to source to find a market, and that's why they might be sold even at distressed prices. And that leads into this much higher penetration of LNG in the mix. As far as electricity is concerned, though, this is also a market that should be followed very closely from the people in the gas industry, because even in Greece, more than 60% of the volumes of gas consumed here are going for electricity generation. Our CCGT units have been used strongly and have been penetrating in the electricity mix very much the past couple of months, displacing coal units. The lignite generation in Greece reached in March at extremely low levels of less than 9%, which is not very common for the Greek market. 30% of our electricity mix came from electricity generated by CCGTs, by gas. What has also been profound for the month of March, because of the situation that we live in, imports in Greece, electricity imports, have risen to 30% of our electricity needs in the country, which is again something that we have not seen before. Renewable energy remains more or less at its levels of about 30%. This shows to everyone that this is a completely new market environment. Gas has a role to play, of course, because of the impact that it has in the electricity markets. But its sourcing is what is much more different than what it used to be. We see LNG penetrating big time in our markets and at very competitive prices. Maybe something that I should mention also, as far as DEPA is concerned as well, is regarding one of the latest developments we had in the market. It concerns the floating storage and regasification unit, the FSRU in Alexandroupolis, which had its binding market test lately. Commitment from international entities around the Balkan area and trading houses has been very strong, which shows that support for projects that are related to LNG imports, because of the picture that we have framed earlier about the LNG markets globally speaking. It's still very strong, and that interest might be translated into another important, let's say, LNG terminal being built in our country. So from my side, briefly, this is it, and I'm sure we can say much more in the discussion to follow. So I'll give the floor back to you, Valerie.
Thank you, Kostas. I just want to add something on what you mentioned. In Greece, you are mentioning a number of figures, but for this year, regarding DEPA or the other companies that are in Greece, what is the worst scenario and what is the best scenario you would like to see? The two extremes. I start with you, Kostas, and then I leave the floor to Panos to see these two extreme scenarios for the coming months.
In terms of market share, if I understand correctly your question,
yeah.
what is?
Yeah.
I mean, definitely we see this big competition coming from LNG as a source, making the situation far more difficult, let's say, for the state company, or to frame it in a different way, because it's a very peculiar case here in Greece. Everyone that has long-term commitments in terms of contracts that are on piped gas contractual basis, it would be facing problems in terms of being competitive, at least in the market, because we know that our competitors are in a position to bring, at least for the coming 2 months, as you mentioned, 2 or 3 months, bringing much cheaper, let's say, sources of gas via LNG. So things are going to be tight. We are entering the summer period. We are only anticipating, what will be happening. I mean, if I say what would be a positive development of the market, would be to have an increase of the penetration of the gas units in the electricity system. But for this to happen, we have to check out the competitiveness of the electricity prices from our neighboring countries. And unfortunately, all signs show that in the coming months, the system marginal price in our neighboring countries will be even lower than in Greece, which means that would make imports more attractive. So I anticipate a balance of about 30% of gas in our mix to be maintained also in the coming 2 or 3 months, and maybe no more than that.
Thank you, Kostas. Panos, in your area, how do you see the best or the worst scenario in the coming months?
What's quite an issue is what will be the demand for transportation of LNG. And of course, there are opportunities, but at the same time, we are not sure what kind of demand will be restored after this disruption is somehow tackled, and what will be the dynamics between different commodities. It is, on a greater sense, it is quite encouraging, the fact that we are switching from coal to gas, to a large extent thanks to the pricing that we're going to see as well, and this has a larger environmental impact. On the other hand, we need to see what will go on, what will be the next day, because we were at a stage where, irrespective of the virus, we were expecting an oversupply, and there was so much work going on new sources of LNG, and there are contracts in place, there are a number of investment projects in place. So as things stand, it's going to be difficult for development to progress, but the least we can hope is to have to somehow ensure that demand will be adequate, perhaps by replacing the less competitive commodities like coal by gas. And the worst case scenario, I'm not sure what the worst case scenario will look like. We hope that if we head back to normalcy from now on, and we don't have another spread of the virus and another crisis, then most probably things are going to get better from now on. But in the best case scenario, I see that we will have a quite difficult rest of the year, but right after that, both the sentiment as well as the real market fundamentals will be more encouraging for the gas market.
All right. Thank you so much. Now I want to give the floor to Mr. Bautz regarding the impact that he sees on the, how is the European gas market affected by the COVID-19, and if you can just give us some figures regarding Switzerland, that would be also interesting.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. If we look at the situation on the European gas market, we see it's quite affected by the COVID-19 because we have a decrease of the demand about 18 to 20% now. And even before the COVID-19 crisis, Europe was oversupplied by gas, so that we have now a situation where we have to look what would happen in the next months. It will depend also in how fast the unlock of this crisis will go. We see different approaches in some European countries, for example, between Italy, Spain, and France, and on the other side in the northeastern countries of Europe, who they started to unlock this COVID crisis. But now, what's the question is how fast will the economy recover? So we had also the problem in Europe. We had a mild winter, 18 and 19. That means gas storages were quite full end of March. It's about 55% full. So now they started to fill the storages in Europe. The campaign is going on and will last probably until beginning of December. So when the storages are full, and if we don't have the demand of the next winter, there will be almost more plenty of gas in Europe. And gas is still coming to Europe, pipe gas or LNG, because we saw also with the spread, which is now really slow between the Asian gas markets and the European gas markets, some of the LNG ships are coming to Europe and try to unload their gas in Europe. And that gives almost a more difficult situation with the gas glut we have now in Europe. So as I said, it's by my introductory remarks, where should the demand come for gas, and what would be happened to balance the production and the demand of gas? I think we will see also in the next time quite an evolving situation, especially in the US, with the US producers, Yes, as we look on the gas prices, there is now we are close to marginal cost with the gas prices. So it will be a very difficult period in the next months for some gas producers, especially in the US. But what we also remark on the European markets, now we have some speculative purchases of gas, which are increased for the next winter. They tried to use the low gas price to cover for the next period. And we will see how the situation will evolve in the next months. But it's also possible that we could have a small gas to coal switch because the carbon prices went down now. And there is also possible that we will see some of the gas to coal switch. But we see also that in France, they had to shut down some of the nuclear power plants. That means also perhaps some more additional needs for gas supply, especially in France. So how all the system will balance, that's the big question for the next weeks and the next months. And we have to follow the situation quite closely. But as I said with my introductory remarks, probably the gas prices will keep low, very low in the next months up to the next winter.
Thank you, René. May I ask a question to all of you regarding what has been said so far? How do you see in the future the role of gas in terms of the Green Deal in Europe? Do you think it's regarding the low price, regarding the storage at our full, regarding the demand that is low? Do you see gas as a winner in this system or no, in fact? Kostas?
Okay, if I share my view on that, as a quick answer, I would say yes, that gas could actually become get out of this situation as a winner in the end for a number of reasons. We do know that gas units are the ones that can support the intermittency that you might see in renewables, and because the Green Deal at the EU level speaks at a very bold program in terms of the penetration of renewable energy in the system, in the European electricity system over the next 10 years. We do believe that gas can be the solution in terms of supporting this activity. This can be emphasized by the latest point of René in regards to France and the nuclear stations, that the moment that this base load energy shuts down or is being reduced, the only way that we can keep the electricity system up and running in conjunction with the renewable energy being generated there will be with gas units. We have the trading of the CO2 permits. We see that because of the reduction in the industrial activity on one hand, and on the other hand, because of the market being quite uncertain, as we have described earlier, we see prices keeping relatively lower, but at a healthy level, if you wish, in continuing with this coal to gas switching that was mentioned earlier. So if I say, because long term in the energy business can be as long as 30+ years. If we look at the next decade, at least the next 10 years, which is the main focus for the Green Deal as well, supporting a lot of the individual governments' national energy plans, we do believe that gas has a role to play. And if I just bring it a little bit back into our, let's say, Greek situation, based on the latest planning from the government in terms of our very high penetration of renewable energy for electricity generation, but generally speaking, into our system. The electrification of our economies. We see more and more, and let's say, electrification even in the transportation sector, coming from e-mobility in one extent. This can always support higher demand for electricity, which will correct itself following this COVID-19 situation, because unfortunately, us in the gas business, a drop of 20%. In the electricity business, we overall see in Europe more or less a drop of 15%. and this is a bit higher than that might be the numbers for Greece. We anticipate that this situation will come back to, when it comes back to normality, it should give the space and more room to gas to evolve and to penetrate even more in our economies and in the electricity mix. So again, summarizing, I would see with a positive note the at least medium-term future for natural gas in Europe.
Thank you, Kostas. Panos, we are all experiencing the beauty of the nature this spring. We are listening to birds. We are seeing a lot of positive aspects in this crisis. And in maritime transport, do you think this crisis could be an accelerator for LNG in shipping in order to reduce all the emissions? Or how do you see things? Because now we are experiencing this important shift. How do you see? What are your views on that?
Honestly, I don't see the crisis contributing towards that direction. I mean, there have been a number of bumpy days in the past few years in shipping, and we would really be in need of a good season, a few good years in order to support this transition from compliant conventional fuel to LNG, because still the cost, the capex to go to LNG is significant. However, there are a number of regulatory actions that lie ahead of us that I believe these actions will push into that direction. But apart from that, and coming to the previous discussion about the coal to gas switch and what is the future of gas, I believe that there is still a long way to green the gas as a commodity. So whether this refers to green liquefaction, if we use, for example, renewable excess energy to liquefy gas to convert it to LNG, and whether we use more efficient ways to burn gas and produce energy, like, for example, the new gas turbines that we have seen with very high efficiency ratios, efficiency that we haven't seen in the coal industry and the coal electricity industry so far. So as far as gas is concerned, I'm quite optimistic that there's going to be a lot of focus in greening the whole supply chain and gas itself, irrespective of what the technology that we will use is going to be. So coming to shipping, I will state again that much will depend on the regulatory actions that we see ahead of us. And in order to mention one or two, these are, of course, the IMO measures on greenhouse gases, but in the wider context of the Green Deal, the European Union's initiative to include shipping under an emissions trading scheme, I think it will become critical as to what the future of LNG in shipping will look like. So if we have a market-based measure, an incentive to turn to LNG within the years to come, we will see more applications of LNG in the shipping sector. My view is that most probably we will see that coming, but the virus disruption does not contribute to that way, because there is a sense of uncertainty and we have lost part of our optimism.
Mm-hmm.
So if this can answer the question, yeah, that's my contribution.
All right. René, do you want to add something? The gas, the Green Deal, how the natural gas industry can adapt to this new context?
I can perhaps a little bit take the situation we have in Switzerland. We are not integrated completely inside the EU, but we have also a kind of a Green Deal objective in Switzerland. And we are also tackling the question, what will be the role of gas in this future? So we developed in Switzerland a strategy where we see a situation that gas could play, and especially also with renewable gases, could play a role in the future. Because if I resume the situation of Switzerland, we have now for the electricity production a part of nuclear power stations, and this power station, nuclear power station, will be progressively stopped in the next few years, up to about 2035. So that's an amount of 40% of the Swiss electricity production. And we have to find a solution, what we will do in Switzerland also to cover this need of electricity, because we see with the digitalization, with electric mobility, and also the use of electricity for house appliances, that we also probably need more and more electricity in the future. So we have to find a solution, especially for winter time, how we can solve the situation to have enough energy to cover the needs of Switzerland. And not only, for example, to import some electricity in winter time. So we have a strategy based especially on also to develop CHP, also decentralized CHP systems provided with natural gas, but also to develop next to it biogas and renewable gases like power to gas, because we have a comfortable situation in Switzerland that we have an excess of electricity production in summertime due to the hydro production. And if we can shift this volume of energy from summer to winter, especially also with molecules, that means with gas and with power to gas, we could find also a solution to cover the peaks we need of electricity in winter, but also with CHP systems also to produce the heat we need in winter time. So that's a little bit what we try to develop. And I think there is a role of natural gas, but especially also a role for renewable gases for the future in Switzerland in this context.
Thank you, René. I maybe will go back to the organizer. Is there any questions from the audience? We are quite numerous online. Do we have questions coming from the participants?
Careful.
No. You have one, Kostas?
Just I don't know if a question to Panayotis and I guess to René, looking at again LNG as a maritime fuel, but not only. How do you see this switch happening and giving some more space to small-scale LNG solutions at the same time? Because I think that in some cases business models in isolation might not be profitable, but if you see that in a combination of a bunkering station as well, that might make sense in order for us to be able to serve some remote areas, some islands maybe, or industrial areas with LNG. The Spanish have done it very successfully. We have seen that with Enagas and the activity in Spain in general. Can we learn from that, and how do you see this possibly evolving in our region, for Greece as well, and maybe the southeast?
Yeah. Panos, you want to answer?
Yeah. But so yes, that's a quite interesting question, and so right now we see a number of bunkering infrastructure developments with something like 40 LNG bunkering vessels and many more planned for development, new construction, and in-service offers. So right now we're going to see the bunkering supply chain. This happens globally.
Yeah.
Yes, but there are a number of areas that were not covered before that than we see now covered. So practically all the main trade routes, and we know that a few gas majors, they have already been offering a worldwide service as far as bunkering is concerned. So today we can say that if someone puts an order today for a gas fuel ship, when the vessel will be delivered, all the main trade routes will be covered by bunkering vessels that can really offer this kind of service. So having those bunkering vessels, which honestly speaking, these are not going to be employed in bunkering full time, we have the opportunity to also develop small scale. And we have worked a lot in recent years in the development of this small scale offering. We have classed, for example, the first FSRU in China, which was a small scale 26,000 cubic meters FSRU to be used in Indonesia. And this comes exactly with the island argument that you mentioned, Kostas. So there are a number of opportunities, a number of solutions in place, and soon we're going to have tangible availability of this. So in the Mediterranean, for example, we will have something like, I don't know, 5, 6 to 10 ships available to carry LNG in small scale basis. So this is a good opportunity for our islands and other users of LNG. And at the same time, I can say this is also a very important chain in the link. We have in all major terminals, we see now the consideration of small scale and bunkering activities. So in the FSRU that is going to be installed in Cyprus, we will have that small scale capability. In the FSRU planned in Greece, we will have this capability of bunkering at small scale. The Revithousa terminal also considers the development of a small scale terminal. That's very important if we want to go down that way.
And DEPA as well, just to mention and complement what you're saying, is investing on this, and we will be soon, be at the forefront of having an availability of a small scale vessel like this to be able to serve the market. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah.
René, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, have also a little joke that when the Swiss yacht Alinghi won the America's Cup, we said Switzerland is a small island in Europe, but we also connected Switzerland with the Rhine River to the sea. That's why also we see sometimes Swiss flags on boats on the sea from Switzerland. But besides this joke, I wanted to say we're looking also in a project for transporting, for example, with bunkering to transport LNG or even bio LNG along the Rhine River up from, for example, Rotterdam to Switzerland, and to store it and to distribute it in Switzerland. But on the other way, we are also looking in some ideas to transport also, for example, CO2 back from, let's say, Basel to Rotterdam, and then to inject the CO2 in the depleted field in the North Sea. So we can find also perhaps a solution also to capture and to store CO2 on the same way. So that's also a kind of bunkering. So we are developing quite some ideas also with our neighbor countries along the Rhine River, but perhaps also in the future we will have also an activity on bunkering along this river in Central Europe.
I have a question for Panos regarding the impact that this crisis has on tourism. A lot of big ships for cruisers. I don't know who will book again a new cruise in the future regarding what has happened in the last weeks. How do you see this impact on the ship owners and ship builders? Do you think it's an opportunity for gas? This particular crisis on ship owners and builders?
Again, I would say that I have not seen some area of opportunity arising from the crisis itself. The hit to especially the cruise industry is detrimental to its health and well-being. I understand that there are plans in place to mitigate the risks of the virus in future business, but of course we expect that unless there is some kind of solution like a vaccine or something, we will not see operations and business as usual quite soon. So from that point of view, I think that heavy capex investment in the cruise industry will wait for some time, and this is going to have some kind of impact in the shipbuilding industry as well. And some of these shipyards are in our area, Italy, for example. On the other hand, we don't know what the exact play and what the exact story will be with pricing. Right now, as things stand, the oil price plunged, so perhaps the argument of steady pricing and the pricing cap of compliant fuel to LNG is not that apparent right now. But when the situation will become steady again and we'll see things going back to normal, we expect to have the same cap, the same difference between LNG and compliant fuel. And this will mean that the future of LNG, apart from any regulatory or environmental incentive to have it going on, there will be a significant financial incentive, economic incentive in opting for LNG in the maritime supply chain. So I see some positive signs, but I don't think that the crisis will help or assist in that direction.
All right. We have a question from the audience. I'm reading into all of you. You don't think that the ongoing COVID crisis is likely to drive some relaxing of the environmental and climate commitments in order to overcome the economic challenges? Yeah, the balance between economic and environmental. We have now 10 minutes left. I would like to have your view because it's very important and we see a lot of articles and comments nowadays regarding this question. Who wants to start? Kostas?
Yes.
All right.
I believe that as an estimation, I mean, when we are looking at the impact that governments wants to see in their environment long term, I don't really see a drawback from the situation, because we do understand that the gross domestic product of the world, and in particular in certain economies, will be hit dramatically over this year. However, because it's a global phenomenon, because of the fact that we have all the central banks around the world supporting and even declaring even additional support in the weeks or the months to come, I think that the economies would be in a position to come back into the state of normality, if you wish, in a couple of years' time, meaning that we should see an influx of low-cost capital, which then means that it will be sourcing at investable opportunities that are also aligned in terms of political direction, if you wish. And we do know that the direction is there, not only at the EU level, but I think at the global level, that we are looking at an energy transition which goes into more, let's say, greener solutions in general to support the environment, which it should continue. Returns are more eminent, let's say, and visible in projects that are supporting this energy transition. And I don't see a big change. Actually, I see that as an opportunity for large sums of capital that will be injected at the state level or at the, generally speaking, at the regional or European or global level, to go into areas that will help in the sustainability of this transition. And if we look at the short term as well, the effect of the coronavirus in the environment has been very positive lately because of the halt of industrial activity and primarily because of the halt in transportation. We have seen that the CO2 emissions have been at record levels. And by starting at that lower level today, I think that policymakers can be more reluctant, if you wish, by taking a couple of more years before they see their real policy directions being applied in the years, in the months to come. So I think we should not be discouraged by that. I think we should be seeing this situation as a revalidation of what the future should be and how sustainable we should be looking at our energy system and our energy mix.
Thank you, Kostas. Panos, I would like to have your views on this question. How do you see?
Yeah, the argument seems reasonable, since we have right now so many problems to deal with. We could somehow stall or delay the transition, but I would tend to agree with Kostas in the sense that there is going to be a need for drastic measures for an economic stimulus right now, and especially in Europe, it seems that this will come on the proviso of strict environmental targets and environmental performance ahead. So this is seen as an opportunity to rethink and rebuild, perhaps to some extent, the economy on more sustainable terms. But in this way, we may see even a change in the benefit of the transition. So I believe that as far as sectors closer to the public are concerned, we may see dramatic changes in favor of evolution and transition. I'm not sure how much time it would take to apply such a measure or a mechanism in shipping. Most probably, this is a very competitive private sector, and it's not going to be easy to apply the same stimulus in shipping. This is why I was not so optimistic about that sector with regard to the virus disruption.
René?
Yeah, I also agree what my two colleagues just said about these climate commitments. I think also the climate commitment is a long-term strategy. It's clear we have a really extraordinary period now with this crisis, and we have to deal with it in the next, let's say, months, probably 1 or 2 years. But I think also this crisis gives an opportunity also for the future to rethink our model, also perhaps also some part of our energy transition. and also to find in the future some new sources of financing, new projects, also in the field of the energy transition. And it gives for me also a good opportunity to rethink also the model. And so I think let's look also in the future and see what we can do also to improve our goals in the climate and environmental sector, and the things that we can also add some new projects also in the field of renewable gases to solve this problem in the future.
As we arrive to the end of this webinar, I would like to ask one final question to all of you. After 1 hour of discussion, and you are all acting in the gas industry, give us two, I would say, two positive signs that will emerge after this COVID virus, when we will be back to a certain normality with all the uncertainties that we are facing. Two positive ground for our industry. Kostas?
Thank you, Valerie. It was a very interesting discussion. Just to make my brief closing as well. What I see is when we are back to normal, I see that gas, as explained earlier, aligning with the European and national environmental goals in general, and the broader Green Deal. Being competitive by keeping, let's say, relatively low prices. Even when we're back in normality, we will see that the fact that gas is more and more accessible around the world and more tradable, so reaching the commodity status, this process that we call it commoditization in our world. We see now that gas is here to stay. Trading of gas will increase, and mostly in the form of LNG, and we can only see that as an opportunity overall for the industry and for our economies to be able to have accessible, cheaper gas. That also solves another problem that was not really mentioned before, but security of supply is a big issue for the European Union, and as part of the greater Green Deal, that was always one of the fundamental reasons why this is also promoted so strongly. And we should see that this issue with a higher penetration of LNG in our systems will become a less of a worry, if you wish, for most of us. So, broadly speaking, and with a final note, I think that from next year, hopefully, when things go back to normal, gas will have its stronger position in the system.
Thank you, Kostas. Panos, may we have your views?
Yeah. Yes, I feel that this crisis shows that we need to get serious about the targets we set, and climate is one of the main targets the society is going to have in the next 30 years. So we need to be very precise and very active on the plan we want to pursue. So what I see is that there's going to be an acceleration towards that direction, and I feel that that acceleration of action will only benefit gas, because it's perhaps the only commodity we have in place which is still a hydrocarbon, but the most climate friendly hydrocarbon we currently have. And we will see most probably after this gas squeezing out other commodities in the energy transition, perhaps faster than it would without the prices being apparent. And the second point that perhaps we could take as a positive point, if we learn from what we have seen, is that we need to build a more flexible market about gas, a more, I could say, tradable market, a more spot market about it. And technology can play a vital role within this context. I mean, how can technology give us the opportunity to trade gas in a better way as a commodity, and perhaps new storage applications, new containment systems, new ships could add could help towards that direction. And that's the two main points that I can see that the crisis will positively contribute in the gas sector.
Thank you, Panos. Very valuable. René?
Yes, I was very impressed when I saw the picture on TV about the city of Wuhan in China with the blue sky and much less pollution than we were used to see in these big cities in China. So I think also that for the future, and that's my positive view on the whole situation, that even if we do really a lot of projects and develop new technologies, we can improve the air quality, and also that probably gas has a big role to play in this field, and also with renewables to clean our cities for the future and to find again the blue sky and the sun during daytime. And secondly, I saw also with this COVID crisis that the gas industry is probably also more resilient than the oil industry. And that's a very positive aspect, that gives us also opportunity in the future to invest also in new technologies because of this resilience, and that we can bring also new projects in the pipeline to develop also with renewables a new energy transition we need, also with this all climate commitment we have, also the energy transition. So that are my two positive aspects from this situation.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the panelists and under the name of the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics and the Global Gas Center. I think it was a very valuable discussion. We pointed the strategic issues that we are facing nowadays, and I think positive points were raised as well for industry for the coming months. Thank you very much, Kostas, Panos, and René, and it has been a pleasure to be with you during this hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, René. Thank you, Kostas.
Thank you. You too. Have a nice day.